Alrighty guys, welcome to the Macquarie University Incubator. If you have not been here before, a big welcome. If you are a returning face, a smaller welcome maybe. So I would like to introduce our two speakers for tonight, Nicole and Michael. So Nicole, she's from Co-Ventured. Since graduating with degrees in law and politics, Nicole has worked as a consultant for one of New Zealand's leading technology delivery consultancies, co-founded a startup which was backed by the New Zealand government and began international expansion to Australia, worked as a product manager for an internationally recognised sustainable fashion app, and is now currently works as the head of startups at Co-Ventured. Outside of Co-Ventured, Nicole is a lover of social enterprises and blogs about sustainable fashion. And Michael Cesa, he runs a personal and business development advisory business, delivering advisory, coaching and program services. Prior to that, he worked as a management consultant at Ernst & Young, as well as in a few startups, and completed a Bachelor of Commerce here at Macquarie University. So I'll invite you all to just watch our Welcome to Country video.
Walamimbi, Warami Midiga, Warami Daruga Nura, Warami Walameta, Warami Wanura Walametikal. We welcome you on behalf of the ancestors, and we acknowledge all of the elders past and present. We acknowledge all Aboriginal nations of Australia. We walk together on this land, and we pay respects to the traditional owners and those who have walked before us. We acknowledge the land's history, yesterday's, today's and tomorrow's. The land speaks of the Darug and their dreaming. We can still feel, hear and see the ancient songlines across this beautiful campus. This land has held many gatherings for centuries, since the Darug's first sunrise some 60,000 years ago. We belong to the land. We are many nations, many people, coming together, looking after this country and respecting each other. We stand here together at Macquarie on sacred ground. As the Wallamai navigate the mangroves and find their pathways, so shall you here at Macquarie. Warami, welcome to Wallamata Juju Goyanu.
Alrighty, thank you guys. So I would like to invite Nicole up.
Thanks, Ellie. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Ellie. As she mentioned, my name's Nicole and I am Head of Startups at Co-Ventured. So for those of you who haven't heard of Co-Ventured before, we are an online platform that connects startups and corporates to help accelerate growth and innovation. Ellie's already mentioned a little bit about myself, but I'll just tell you a bit more about me. So, I worked as an IT consultant after university, and while working at this consultancy, that's when I met two awesome people who ended up being my co-founders. So we founded a HR tech platform for vineyards and orchards to help manage seasonal employment paperwork. And so while doing this startup, we created a partnership with the New Zealand government. And so it was through this partnership process that I really understood what it was like being a startup, creating a partnership with a big organisation or a corporate. So 1 year later and 7 customers, we decided to have a go at coming to Australia. And so we were accepted into a Slingshot Accelerator program. So we were doing that for about 4 months, and it was a challenge for us, to be honest. And where we got to was basically to a point where we actually invalidated our product. We had to change it slightly, but by that time we had run out of runway. So we started to wind up the company. I worked, as Ellie mentioned, with a sustainable fashion app as a product manager. And now I've recently joined Co-Ventured as Head of Startups, which is a pretty cool job title, and I absolutely love what I do. So today I want to give you some insight on Co-Ventured and what we see in terms of corporate startup relationships. So I'm going to talk about 3 things. So why corporate startup relationships are important, the process that's involved in corporate startup relationships, and what to consider before you start engaging with a corporate. And then lastly, I want to share a little bit more about Co-Ventured and a case study, so how we actually helped one of our startups and one of our corporates connect and accelerate their innovation together. So corporate startup relationships are important for two reasons: innovation and growth. So corporate startup relationships it's a fairly new area. 2 years ago we didn't really hear much about startups working with corporates. And the reason is, as I'm sure you all know, is that innovation is happening at such an accelerated rate. And corporates are scared. They do internal innovation, but that's not enough anymore. So they need to look externally and see what startups are doing, what the rest of the world is doing in terms of innovation, to ensure that they actually stay relevant. And so this is why we see a lot of corporates now turning to startups to help them with their innovation. So what we're hearing is that 60% of corporates partner with startups because they want to explore new technologies and business models. And 26% of corporates are partnering with startups because they want to explore future industries. So startups and corporates are very different. On one hand, as you know, we've got startups who are agile and they're really good at creating a proof of concept and also developing product that really meets the customer's need. However, startups often struggle and stumble when it comes to the scaling and growth phase. That's the phase that's often the most challenging. Whereas on the other hand, we have corporates who have a lot of resource. So they're so good at building the product and actually scaling it and taking it to market. But as you know, corporates are often a lot slower than startups, so it takes a long time for them to get the product to market. But also because they're not as close to the customers as startups are, they often maybe miss the mark in terms of the product that they actually build. So when corporates are looking at working with startups, our corporate clients look at 3 different areas when they want to connect with startups in terms of innovation. So the first is core business innovation, and this is when the corporate leverages the startup to improve their operations or their costs, or bring in new technologies to help them run their core business more efficiently. Next is research and development. So startups and corporates can work together to develop new technologies, to figure out how they actually work, and to do more research and development on a new area. And last but not least is the moonshot innovation. So this is the blue sky thinking. And so this is when a corporate wants to gain strategic positioning in a new market, or to understand new disruptive technologies. So startups, on the other hand, want to work with corporates for a number of reasons. And the main reason that startups are working with corporates is for resource. So it's really great for startups to partner with a corporate to leverage some of the resources that they have. So we see these startups working with the corporates in so many different ways. And so these ways listed up here are just some of the ways we see. So startups will work with corporates to have more understanding on the market, to gain access to markets or to new markets, to have the corporate as a customer, to gain technical or business expertise from the corporate, to gain customer data which can actually help them grow their product, to use the corporate as a distribution network, a channel to market, and probably the one that most people are familiar with, corporate funding. So what's the process involved in corporate startup relationships? So when we talk to our startups, we want them to remember 4 key things. So it's really important when you approach the startup to understand what you want out of the relationship. So what are your objectives? And as a startup, what can you actually bring to the table? It's really important to think strategically, because sometimes it may seem really great to partner with a corporate, but it might not actually be the right thing for your startup and where you're at the moment. So it's really important to think through some of the objectives and where you actually want to end up by having this relationship. I've just noticed that all of them are 0.1, but they're all very important. So yeah, consider them as number 1 points. So the second one is to understand the corporate. And that sounds really silly, but often people don't actually do their research when they're approaching the corporate. And so much of the time startups think about pitching to the corporate. But you've got to understand, like with any business, you've got to understand your customers. And if you're approaching the corporate, you've really got to understand, you know, where are they at in their innovation cycle? Do they have the right processes in place? Have they worked with startups before? What are their goals working with the startup? So it's really important to understand that, because if you do understand them, then you can actually create a meaningful conversation when you start engaging. And another really important one is to find the right person. So corporates are beasts. They're absolutely massive. And if you're not talking to the right person, you can often find yourself wasting time because you're passed from one person to the next and you feel like you're not making any progress forward. So it's really important to find the right person in the business, and when you find them, they'll be able to help you navigate the business, but they'll also be your champion, which is awesome because you'll have a champion from within the business which can help you move your idea forward. And last, something that we really tell our startups is patience. And it can be so hard for startups because you just want to move fast, you just want to get things done right now. But having patience is really important because corporates will move slower than you. And you need to make sure that you've got enough runway and not to put all of your eggs in one basket because sometimes it can take a long time. So at a high level, this is kind of what the process looks like when you're closing a corporate startup relationship. And this is just one way. There are so many different ways that corporates and startups work together. But typically, how it works is first a startup will identify who the corporate is that they want to work with and do some research on them. Then they'll make contact with the right person in the corporate. And then they'll have this exploration and research phase. So this is when they get to know each other, figure out what a partnership would look like and what would be beneficial for both parties. And then that key person will be assigned to you. You'll negotiate the details of the partnership. Then there's the legals, and then you move on to scoping out the implementation of the relationship. And this also something really important to remember as well as a startup is compliance. So you need to make sure that your product or your business is actually compliant and figure out how to work that into the corporate. And last but not least is to execute it, which is the great part. So sometimes it can take only a few months, but sometimes it can take 6 months or a year or sometimes even longer. So that's why we always say to the startups it's really important to know what you want out of the relationship to make sure that it's worth, you know, going through this process, because it's definitely worthwhile, but you've got to make sure you know what you want out of it. So how does co-ventured help startup and corporate relationships? So as I said before, co-ventured is an online platform that connects startups and corporates to accelerate innovation and growth. So when we launched, we found that startups were really struggling to connect with corporates. And this was because they didn't know which corporates were open to a conversation. They didn't know what the corporates were actually looking for. And they also didn't know who the right person was to talk to. And on the other side, we have our corporates who were keen to innovate, keen to connect with the startup community, but they didn't really know how to do that. And they wanted to connect with startups to help them, you know, explore new ideas, bring in new talent, and also to understand how they can accelerate their innovation. So you can kind of look at us as a Tinder, but for startups and corporates, because we are like matchmaking them, we help them find each other, but hopefully we create longer lasting relationships. So yeah, that's what we do. We hope that there'll be good relationships that come out of our online platform. So we've helped startups and corporates in lots of different ways, and it's not just funding. Recently we had one of our corporate clients have some of their international executives come to Australia, and they reached out on our platform and got around 10 startups to pitch in front of these executives, which was super great for them because they were able to validate their business, but they were also able to make international connections, which helped them grow their business. Another example that we've had is a startup leveraging a corporate as a channel to market. So the startup's target market were in the elderly target market, so they weren't on like Facebook or like Twitter or all those kind of places. So they partnered with an organization that sent out a newsletter and had a lot of clients who were in that 65 plus range. So that worked out super well because they were able to reach around 40,000 of their target clients. So that was great. And one case study I want to share with you is one of our startups, Liftango and GUD. So Liftango is a ride sharing company, if you haven't heard of them, a startup that have developed a platform to help employees ride share when going to work. And GUD is one of our big corporates on the platform. So both of them, Liftango basically jumped on to CoVentured because they were keen to grow and accelerate. So when they were on the platform, they were searching through our corporate profiles, and that's when they came across GUD's corporate profile on the platform. And so on there, GUD lists their interest areas. So GUD was letting all of our startups know, if you want to engage with us, these are the kinds of things that we're interested in. And that's when Liftango saw that GUD was interested in revolutionizing the Aussie car trip. So they're like, hey, this is cool. They directly messaged and connected with each other on our platform. And after many conversations and a few months later, Liftango actually received a 6-figure investment from GUD. So it was a win-win situation because Liftango received funding to help them accelerate their business and really scale up. But it was also great for GUD because they were able to gain a foothold in another market, which was ride sharing, and that's something that was new to their portfolio. So that's what CoVentured does, and hopefully I've provided a little insight into corporate startup relationships and how we help them. So I'd love for you to remember 3 things, and that's that corporates and startup relationships should be mutually beneficial. So while it may seem great to partner with a corporate, you should really know what you actually want out of it and how does that affect your business long term. And it's really important for startups to do their research and don't just pitch the corporate, ask them questions as well. And CoVentured is a platform that can help any startup and corporate get connected with each other. So that's corporate startup relationships from a CoVentured perspective. If you want to know more about CoVentured, flick me an email or jump onto our website, which is listed there. And if you're a startup that's wanting to get connected with a corporate, I'd encourage you to jump on to CoVentured. It takes less than 10 minutes to create your free profile, and you can have access to 60 of Australia's leading corporates. And for any corporates in the room, if you're interested in getting connected with startups, I can tell you more about that. So just flick me an email or come talk to me later. Thank you so much for having me. You'll just have a little pat.
Awesome. So while these guys swap mics, I'd like to invite up Michael, but can we get another big round of applause for Nicole, please? Alrighty, so I know you all have heaps of questions, but we are going to hold them to the end, so we'll throw around the mic, and you can either ask Nicole or Michael at the end whatever you want to know.
No, I'm all good. I don't think I won't use that. That's just recording, right?
Yeah, just
might be a bit loud, so it might be all good.
Sure.
Yeah, fluctuate a bit. If anyone, everyone hear me up the back? Okay. Okay, cool. I just don't want it to blow your ears out. Sometimes I get a bit excited. So I'll go over it. All right. So before I get started, who here is running their own business currently? Just so I know. So sort of tailor. Great. And who wants to run their own business one day? Okay, fantastic. So I'll touch on a bit of both, and then I'll touch on how that's applicable, really tying into some of the great points Nicole made as well. And I hope to not talk about myself too much, but really integrate the key lessons I've learned over what's been a crazy last year for me. And while I go through this as well, I want you to all take into account that only about a year and a half ago, I was sitting my final exams here at this university. So please don't fall into the, trap we often fall into where we see someone who's done something and we idealize them in some way and we say, oh, they're on some sort of, they've got something different about them. Not at all. I'm just somewhat delusional in pursuing what it is I want to do, and I've learned a number of lessons along the way, so I hope to share those with you tonight. So, I'll get into it. So, before we even talk about actually how we can collaborate in any sense of the word with, I guess, the corporate world, we need to lay the foundations. Now, the biggest thing I see when I'm working with a number of clients, and just to tap into what I actually do, so as Ali touched on, so I run a personal development business. And basically what came about is I, over years, read a ton of books, read everything I could on self-help, on the Tony Robbins, on everything you see in the seminars, the programs, and really just looked at it and thought, none of this is really creating any tangible change in my life. What's wrong here? What are the missing links? And after being obsessive with it really, and then feeling that inner urge to share it with people, built that into a bunch of systems. I now teach with mostly business owners, but also a number of people who want to start their own business as well. So as a result, the number one thing I found that is so common is a lack of alignment before even starting off. Now what I mean by alignment is, that thing that wakes you up in the morning on the occasional day, and you might feel excited. Maybe there's some idea you go to bed with and you wake up and you're excited. Maybe it's going to see a particular friend. Maybe it's just going to partake in some event that isn't of the normal form for you. Now what I do is I make sure my clients take that, expand upon it, and actually build a business around it. Now, who here obviously as a human falls into the boat of maybe more often than not waking up without that level of excitement? I think we all lack that sometimes, right? Now the biggest thing I found is it all comes down to lacking that alignment with the subconscious and the conscious mind. So really coming down to asking the fundamental question, if I wanted to be like a little kid on Christmas morning, what would my life look like day to day? And then from there, how can I build a business around that? So for those of you who are thinking of starting some form of business, coming from this frame will help you immensely. You'll be able to go into it with so much more passion, with so much more enthusiasm, with so much more energy. And as I'll get into soon, when we go into wanting to partner with a corporate or anything in that sort of nature, energy is what's going to get you there. Coming across with this passion, with this enthusiasm, I've found time and time again, that's what's helped me the most. Even when I was at my old job at EY, so multiple times I'd commit to things which I probably couldn't deliver on, and I'd be talking to clients who are double my age and running some presentation, and I'd watch them initially just sit down at the back and say, what the hell has this young kid got to say about my current position? And when you come with certainty and energy and absolute belief in what you're delivering, then all of a sudden those, I guess, weird sort of rationalizations about what you're doing there they go away, they dispel. And so if you can come from the same sort of approach with your own business, then things really start happening for you. And you'll find almost in a miracle sort of way, you find all these opportunities just start coming to you, start attracting the right people, and ultimately you're able to just perform at another level. You can, like some of those, I guess, content producers on YouTube, you see people working long hour days and you wonder how they do it. All comes back to this alignment. So I'll give you one example. So one of my clients, 6 months ago, he had 2 business opportunities and he was very much torn between the two. One was a very complex proposition, really. It was built on a large network and it was built on making all these fancy little changes, having the perfect little website, etc. And I actually said to him at that point, I won't work with you if you go for that business, all because of this one principle. And when he shifted over to the other, the actual simple solution, then things started really happening for him. He noticed that his customers all of a sudden started signing with him just because they had this trust. They were like, where's this trust come from? Why is it I feel this business owner operates from absolute integrity, and how will that tie into the actual service they provide? So it really changes things up, and now that business owner is on track to, we're on track to about 400,000 in a year. So it's really, really a rewarding experience to see something where it's not based on external strategy. So it's very easy to get caught up in, and I've made this mistake a million times. We're caught up in all the strategy, and there's so much out there. Do this for marketing, set up this funnel, etc., etc., etc. Bring it back to basics, and I'll tie on this point a number of times, bring it back to the most simple solution. That's probably the best thing I can say to you. Just make it a habit for yourself, and if you want to take this down, look for the simplest solution in every single thing you do, and things will flow a lot better when we come from that place. Now, you may say, what's that about? Forget the hustle. Now, what I'm really referring to here is this whole culture of hustle, 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 do more and more and more work, and what tends to happen, and what I've found so often in clients, is it doesn't actually get anything done. It doesn't get a lot done. I'm sure you can all relate where you've gone into this state of just fear, anxiety, stress. How is something going to come through? but nothing gets produced of significance from that state. Rather, it's you wake up the next day, you're in the shower, oh, I've got the perfect idea, I'm moving forward. Okay, so what I really want you to take on here is get away from this and realize that it is mostly an ego game where you want to say, you know, I hustle and I work hard and I do all these hours, and actually take a look at how can I be very strategic here? How can I really tap into what I'm best at? And as I said, it's very much built off that base of alignment. How can I really tap into my greatest strengths and leverage that in the best sense of the word? So the next one is belief. Now, this is something I talk about a lot, and for the simple reason of A, I've pretty much built my whole business off that, and B, it's what will help those of you who are still starting out to bridge the gap, and those of you who already started to bridge the gap between corporate and startup. Now, I'll give you a few examples of when this has been the case for me. So when I left, everyone at my previous job, I remember running a talk similar to this actually, and everyone, they said, you know, we want someone to speak about motivation. Someone to talk about how to be productive. I'm like, okay, cool, I love this stuff. So I get up, do my thing, full of energy, talk to the crowd, and everyone's just crossed arm. You know, this is not for me. And so there's a lot of things that will hinder your belief, especially in those early stages of startup. And as I said, you can focus on all the extrinsic strategies in the world, but at the end of the day, if you deny that inner guidance and the limitations you put on yourself regarding belief, not much is gonna happen. So what happened was, I told everyone after that, hey guys, I'm gonna leave EY, it's gonna be fantastic. No one was too happy about that, in fact, rather critical. And as a result, when you go into a market and you're coming across as someone in the young 20s trying to tell people who are double your age that you have a better strategy for how they can improve their personal life as well as their business, unless you have ridiculous belief and certainty, not a lot happens. And so I want you to take that into account for your particular scenario as well. We often fall into this trap of, I guess, a prison in our mind where we set all these circumstances on a conscious level of this is how things will go, this is how I achieve it. I have to have the perfect plan. But understand that every time you seek certainty on that external level, it's really just a reflection of that lack of internal certainty. So really build that in and find ways where you can, as I said, it comes back to alignment. If you're starting off in business and you're like, you know, who here is overwhelmed in a sense by all the ideas out there and they're like, where do I start? I want to start something, but I'm not too sure. Does anyone relate to that? Yeah, so I was in the same place. I'm like, what the hell do I do? I remember waking up at 3 a.m. every day before work, and I was just cold calling businesses, and I was trying to understand what are their needs, how can I solve them, how can I just build anything to get out of this job? And that was like 2 months in. And hence why my PowerPoint slides aren't that great, because I've really rejected that side of my life. And so what happens is, when you take that off for a second, take the foot off the pedal, as I said, take away from that old hustle approach and say, you know what are my greatest strengths? What can I come into a market and say with absolute certainty I can produce a result far better than anyone else? And when you tap into that, that's when you'll really be able to create results. So for those of you, as I said, who are still starting out, what I'd really suggest is just make it a habit of sitting down with yourself every night and sliding over like a film, all these potential scenes in your film of what would be an ideal business for you, an ideal life, no attachment to income, no attachment to any material sense, no attachment to, I'm a hustler, entrepreneur sort of culture that's become quite toxic in my perception, but rather just come back to what excites you. And when we build it around that, that's when the logic gets thrown out the window and you're able to actually create something. And as I said, when you come to clients, and especially if you want to collaborate in any corporate sense, like Nicole spoke about, you need to come across with a lot of certainty. You need to understand that the people you are going into business with at this very moment, the meetings, whatever they may be, they are people who have based their life on certainty, okay? Very strict procedures, projects, everything is timed. And so in order to really meet them at that level of certainty, you need to have a strong level of internal certainty. And as I said, it comes back to alignment. So I'll give you an example. When I started out, I was still figuring out, you know, how do I even package this whole personal development thing? I love helping people with confidence. I love helping people with self-acceptance and really performing. And I know it creates business results, but what do I do? So just came straight out, ran a few events and said, a few people were interested after that. And they said, you know what, one of my clients actually, he was borderline suicidal at one stage and he was in debt. And you have to at those times be able to say with absolute certainty, you know what, I can figure it out. And that can only come from an internal place. And so that's pretty much how I built my business, with that crazy level of certainty and sitting people down, looking them straight in the eye and say, I don't care what you're going through right now in your business, in your personal life, I'll solve it, no problems. And as a result, that's really allowed me to have a lot of flexibility. It's allowed me to take on people with a various degree of needs, and it's really built my whole business off referrals, because people say, oh, I don't really understand this thing Michael does, but you should go see him. And if anyone's seen some of my content online, you might have seen I posted a video lately where I say, I'll solve an emotional behavioural pattern in 10 minutes. That's where that comes from. It comes from producing the results over and over again, but if you want to bridge that gap, whether it be between corporate or whether it be starting your own thing, you need to have that certainty. And sorry, I just rabble on about it. It's like the most integral thing you can take away. And as I said, just think of what excites you and how can you build something around that. Then all the affirmations, visualizations in the world can only do so much if that's not a factor. Whoops, just went back one. Yes, it's gone a few times. So customer centricity as well, and it kind of ties into what I was talking about. So it's so often, and as I said, I kind of identify the whole startup culture that's kind of taken over, we forget the customer centricity. And if anyone's read the 4 Steps to Epiphany, you'll know that the customer is king in those initial days, and you need to build everything around that. And that's ultimately will allow you to propel. I see far too many people, and I've actually fired clients because of this. They are so attached to, I need to have this perfect product. It's got to look perfect. I've got to have predicted sales, the perfect marketing strategy. I'll know every piece of this puzzle. Now that may work in corporate, but it doesn't work when you're starting off. So I would highly encourage you to really detach from that and identify, you know what, is this honestly me from the internal level, just not being okay with the amount of uncertainty I'm going to be faced, not being okay with, you know what, I might cry every fortnight for the first 6 months of my business. True story. You really need to look at what pillars of certainty am I holding on to in that regard, and now how can I serve a customer in the best way if I'm in the right place? Well, as I said, a similar situation for me. So I took on clients, I made a commitment to them, and I knew I could deliver in the internal sense. And then I ended up building a 12-week program. This was one of the stages I went through. And I said, you know what, this program will solve this problem, this problem, this problem, as long as you commit to the process. Week 1 began, and I'd only built week 1 the night before. And the reason many of you may say, you know, that's apprehensive, that's a bit risk-taking sort of behavior. But no, consider customer centricity. Consider, how can I really get in the heads of every single customer and build something to their exact specific needs? And as a result, every single customer who left was sending me referrals. They were telling me how great it was, telling me it met exactly what they wanted. And if you see, you might check out my page later. Some of the reviews on my page are a bit funny. One customer said, this man's like a gift from God. He understood my exact problem at the exact time. And what I'd say to you is, as I said, don't look at that as something special. Look at it as you all have that specific gift. You have something that you inherently are very strong at. And now if you build something around that, that's when the magic happens. That's when you're able to tap into that inner sort of genius. Now, the reason I've got here startup versus business is, as I said, because I've seen entrepreneur or wantrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, time and time again, come to me asking to just really create some sort of result in their business. And when I say get back to basics, talk to customers, talk to the people you're trying to develop relationships, if it's in a corporate sense, like Nicole said, actually going out and talking to corporates and saying, what are your specific needs and how can I solve that? And the problem is, when we get lost in this whole idea of, you know, startups and VC and flash, we forget the basics. So some of my most successful clients have been the ones that have just stuck to a traditional business model. And I've had to slam it into their heads of look for the most simple solution. Any of you right now could pick up the phone tomorrow, have no idea at all what business you want to start, say, you know what, I love this niche. Maybe, you know, I love companies that produce solar panels. I just love that initiative. It's so good. I'm not Elon Musk, but you know what? I might be there one day. And you call them up on the phone and you say, hey, what are the biggest problems you're facing in your business right now in regards to software, in regards to your team, in regards to you personally? What are they? You find that, you delve into it, and you really investigate their needs coming from the frame of how can I just give to this person? And as a result, there's your business. You now have a problem. You validate it by talking to multiple people, and within a week, you can pre-sell. You can actually pre-sell on something that, you know, is away from this mystical startup land, just because you've brought it back to basics and really serving people's needs. And so, if we take that into consideration with, I guess, bridging the gap with the corporate world, what are their needs? It's not that hard to really get attention in the corporate world. But you need to know how to navigate it. You need to know can I meet someone's needs so well, and really just look at people from their lenses. Really just look at what that is. And that ties into this. People. So when I was at my job, I sucked at pretty much everything. I sucked at all of it. But what set me apart and what helped me really, I guess even give me the confidence to leave in the first place, was looking at how can I serve the needs of everyone there? How can I communicate better than anyone? How can I just really do the things no one else is doing? And as I said, it's often the simplest thing. Let's say the most complex idea is I'm going to make this perfect plan and project, I'm going to implement it, and it's going to create all this change in the organization. Or you just go up to one of the directors and say, hey, what are you going through right now? How can I help? I really care. It's really that simple. And if you're bridging the gap, find where these people go. It's not too hard. And then see what their deepest needs are and build that emotional connection. I can't tell you the importance of that. Really just connect with every single one of your customers. In fact, that's been the biggest reason I've been able to sell, and then change the lives of my current clients, is because at every single moment when they were on that bridge, where they're in debt or they're just facing some difficulty and they make the jump to commit to improving their life, it's that emotional connection. It's me understanding their problems, empathizing for their problems, and it's no different if you're talking on a larger scale as well. At the end of the day, it's just relationships. And from an empathetic point of view as well, you want to obviously speak their language. You want to come from, what are they thinking right now? How can I serve them and make them look good? If that means making them look good in their boss, they can say, hey boss, Mr. Director, I now have all these startups lined up, and this really fits into our initiative where we can say we're collaborating with startups. Whatever it may be, just let go of this idea of complexity. As I said, it's so ingrained in the startup culture, and it's something I've really tried to shake out of people sometimes, and really look at what's the simplest thing I can do. It's not going to be comfortable, but it will be extremely simple. Okay, so always look for that simple solution, as I said. Now, this kind of ties into, I've spoken enough about certainty, but clarity is why. So, clarity as well. So in terms of clarity, get back to the basics. Why are you doing what you're doing? What gets you up every single day? And if you had to write down a why right now, like literally go home tonight and write, why am I doing every single thing in my life? Why have I got certain people in my life? Why am I doing a certain career? Why? Get deeper and deeper, and you'll broaden your awareness. And when you broaden your awareness, you really open up the possibility for new opportunities to present themselves. But if we have that foundation of a strong why, and as I said, it's really built into alignment, then things can really take off. So for those of you who haven't started something yet, but you're thinking of going forward, what I'd really advise for you is just think of what ignites you. Think of what you're like, I am so passionate about that. If my life was just a dream, what could I really ignite with that why? And honestly, if you come from that foundation, you always find a way to build it on an external sense. It's just inevitable. Because as I said, you'll just come from a place of absolute energy, and that's something I talk about a lot. More people put too much emphasis on things like time and being busy. Get rid of that for a moment and just think of things from an energy perspective. What gives you energy? What takes energy from you? Go home and literally put that in 2 columns. What gives you energy? What takes away? Don't just outsource any task to take it away, and focus on the most fundamental things at any one moment, and people will feel that, people will come to you, and it just becomes this compounding effect where you're just having a much larger impact, really. And congruence. So congruence is that feeling when, I'll tell you about incongruence. That probably seems more relevant. Sometimes we experience it where you say something and you're like, did I just do that? Did I really just do that? And I'm not talking about a Sunday morning when you feel a bit hungover from the night before. I mean, actually, you're in your job and you're like, why am I here? Or you're starting that business, or you commit to a sale or something where you're like, you know what, this just doesn't feel right. That's serious. Pay real attention to that, delve into that, and now think, how can I establish congruence at every level of what I do? How can my marketing be congruent? How can my personal values that I push in this business be congruent? How can my product and service be absolutely congruent with whatever values I'm pushing? And when you do that, you'll notice that enthusiasm day to day comes back. And this is coming from someone who needed like 4 coffees a day just to get my ass out of bed not too long ago to sit those final exams. So really tap into that. And as I said, if you can get away from this idea of doing all these things and all these ideas and just bring it back to the absolute simplest form of what makes me feel good in myself. There's all something every one of you can say right now that if you're in conversation, you bring up quite often. There's that thing that your friends kind of nag you about because you're like, this guy's a weirdo, we don't care about your skydiving adventures or something like that. And when you come back to that place of what actually kicks that in, that's when you'll be able to create results from that. And then you can actually just build it out. Then you can do amazing things like actually look at it and say, you know what, how can I use this day to day? How can I use this to manage procrastination? How can I use this to make all these other changes that I'm facing right now? And the last one is fear. So fear is something I deal with pretty often. I've had, after posting some videos online, I've had multiple people from multiple countries message me and say, please, I need you to fix my fear now, whatever that is. And I say, okay, sure, let's sit down and let's do that. Let's get to the root cause of that fear. Now, I want you to all understand that I'd say 90% of your actions in your startup, or if you want to start a startup, is going to be determined by your ability to navigate through fear. We've all had those experiences where we're just about to make a move and you're terrified of what people think. And when I put my first video online, I was shitting my pants. I was terrified. When I did my first event, I was terrified as well. Hell, even now, I've still got it burning away. But the more you can become comfortable with that and accept that, hey, it's not going to go away, and there's going to be more and more of it as you go. As I said, I've had multiple nights where clients just call me up and they're on their last legs. They've hit some pressure point, and I'm like, man, how can someone my age even solve this? I've read all the books, sure, I've created results in the past, but sometimes that fear just takes over. And so what you really need to do in that very moment is stop, calm down, forget this whole, you know what, I've got to work hard or work through it, and really take a look at where is this fear coming from? Is it coming from the people in your life? Is it coming from you actually pursuing something you're not meant to be pursuing? Because that is a big part of it. What is it at that very moment? And as I said, if you can just become aware of it, I don't usually speak for only half an hour, so I can't get into all the strategies of it, but if you just become aware of it, that's 50% of it, you'll be able to really just trace your own behavioural patterns. If you can trace your own behavioural patterns, you'll be able to just develop a sense of internal self-awareness and EQ that will just set you apart. And so the result is you pursue that corporate deal, you start that business, you just go for the simple solution, and all of a sudden cold calling, speaking, committing to what you commit to with a client doesn't seem like that big an issue. Because now you're like, okay, I'm aware of what's causing it, and let's move forward. And it's a very, very powerful thing, but I can't emphasize enough the effect this will have. I'd say actually 50%, if not more, of the results I've produced for my own clients, and they've ranged from a number of things on the spectrum of saving a marriage, I know that sounds really weird, don't ask me how I get into these things, all the way to the spectrum of actually doubling revenue, and it all comes down to your ability to navigate fear. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Really just come to a place of absolute groundedness in yourself and absolute certainty, and then move forward. I can't emphasize this enough. I see too many people where they jump in and they think, you know what, don't worry about all this emotional, personal stuff. I'm going to just figure it out. And yes, that does work to a degree, but if you can just take the time to sit with yourself, figure out how you work, and then when you're in those pressure situations, you won't be beating your head into a wall thinking it's as bad as it is. So as I said, 50% of it, look at your fear, whatever that may be, and let it arise. Sit with it, become comfortable with it. What is it at this very moment? And then from there, you can identify, how do I move forward? How do I actually turn this into an advantage? And there's this whole thing I talk about where high achievers, we fall into a sort of paradox where, let's say, fear motivates. You know what? I'm terrified of being like everyone else. I want to achieve all these things. I want to make money. I'm terrified of all these things. But the problem is, when that driver is fear, it leads to self-sabotage. It leads to beating ourselves up. It leads to, who's had that experience where you achieve something and you thought it'd be so great, it'd be so amazing, and then the next day like, is that it? It's pretty common, right? And if you can just understand that it's a paradox that many of us go through, and it doesn't have to happen, you can enjoy the whole journey, and that will allow amazing things for you. It'll allow you to be able to collaborate with corporates, or it'll allow you to be able to just acquire clients at a rate your competition can't, and it will allow you to not have to worry about these fancy little strategies of marketing and funnels, but rather, when you come from that place of authenticity, what is the optimal solution for me to build something around? So quite often with clients, I always describe it in this way. So there's multiple paths you can take to a goal. You'll get there eventually, but it's the optimal path which matters most. Now the optimal path, and many confuse this, many people think that you got to kill yourself, you got to be through a ton of stress, ton of anxiety, all these things, when every single one of those emotional traits never actually produced anything for you of pure significance. And by pure significance, I mean what you're best at, your absolute strengths and what you're really good at. And so when we take it back a notch and we look at, okay, well, that didn't produce the results I want. How can I be super happy along this journey? Stupidly happy. And some people who I know in the audience have related to that. Tom coming into my office and saying, like, what are you on? You know, you seem extremely happy. And if you can come from that frame, things will be a lot better. And as I said, it's really just taking away from the whole hustle and startup identity. And how can I enjoy this process? How can I just love the process so much and come from the frame that there are no actual problems? It's just a mental foreplay, if you will. It's this conscious mind just going off the tap, your monkey mind, and you try the meditating, you try all these things, but nothing seems to calm it down until you get back to the fundamentals of what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Do I love it? And for those of you who are just starting out, as I said, I can't emphasize the importance of that. And that's just coming off the back of multiple clients wanting to start a business and thinking, I've got to start some little drop shipping store, I've got to start this Amazon business, I've got to start something that is just going to look fantastic to everyone, and it's proven and it's certain, and as a result you completely disregard your subconscious desires. You completely disregard what, I guess if you look at it in a spiritual sense, but I won't get too woo-woo, what that life path is for you, what that ultimate higher purpose is for you. So come closer to that, things will work themselves out. But I guess if there's one message I want to really leave you with, it's have a look at where you are now as a character. Really have a look and think, how can I improve on this? How can I leverage this? How can I make sure I'm waking up every single day feeling like a kid on Christmas morning as I'm pursuing my business? And if you come from that place, the rest will figure itself out. You'll create the opportunities you need. You will be able to come up with the solutions you need, and things will just go into this nice little flow. You know, people talk about the flow, not getting too out there and too airy-fairy. But if you get to that place, that's when the magic really starts to happen. So if you're in business currently, have a look at, okay, just really sit down tonight and evaluate on a personal level, emotionally, why am I not as happy as I should be? Why am I not, maybe producing the results I should be, and see how you can link that together. As I said, 50% is awareness. And then if you're starting something out, just get away from this whole idea of starting a business. Like, throw that out, just forget it and think, how can I create the life I want? And then the business will come around that. It's so much easier doing it that way. As I said, if you can do anything, just one exercise tonight, focus on those scenes. Close your eyes, meditate a bit, and then think, what would my ideal life look like? If life was an absolute dream right now, then you burst into that, break it open, and you can create some amazing results. And if nothing else, just take it as a testament from someone who has been told by every single person not to do what he's doing, as making it work and not caring and just going crazy with it, just going absolutely crazy with it, not knowing what's going to happen day to day, and really enjoying the process. So that's possible for all of you. If someone in their 20s can off the bat solve a marriage or build a business, help someone build a business based off their personal growth, then the same is possible for all of you. So I don't want it to get too into that sort of, still just lost the slide, into that motivational sort of inspirational category, but rather really evaluate where you're at. Really heavily evaluate where you're at and look at what are the steps I can take to refine my character. How can I become more emotionally stable? How can I become more excited about what I do? And how can I really integrate a sense of purpose into what I do? You need to really, I can't emphasize this enough, become like a missionary, become someone who's just obsessed with doing what they want to do. And if that means setting a larger vision, it means setting a larger vision. I think that's inevitable for a lot of people, but even look at it at a smaller level. In a year, what do you feel like I'm on a mission to do that? And that would excite me so much. And it's that thing that my friends shut me down about because they think I'm a little crazy, and just ignore all the noise, become a bit delusional in a lot of ways, and then go forth towards what you want. So I can't do this for much longer, so I'm still doing this now, I guess, in the habit of it. But if any of you feel like you are blocked, or there's something where you go forward and it just brings you back, you can click that link. Actually, I'd say do it tonight, because after tonight I'm running another event tomorrow which is going to have a big influx of people. So click on that link tonight, book a time with me, and I'll just give you an hour for free. No sales pitch, nothing. Just how can I help you where you're at? How can I give you clarity? And sometimes it often just takes a conversation. I won't go crazy style on you and just go deep and solve something in one session. Rather, just understand that external perspective has a profound effect. So if you're interested in that, if you want to really just have a look at where am I at and how do I go forward, business plan, personal plan, whatever that may be, I'd be happy to give you a lot of value, as it's something I believe if I just give more and more, eventually you'll come back to me in some way, shape or form. So the other thing is as well, thank you for putting on with my ramble. It's a bit all over the place sometimes. But if you want to chat after and just about anything really, personal development or selling products you didn't think you could sell, whatever that may be, let me know. But if you're serious about this and you're someone who takes action, make sure you do that tonight, because after tonight I don't have the capacity anymore. So yeah, thank you very much.